Is ingeskakel op Groot Plaas. Ons gas saam met ons vanoggend Dr. Rebone Morane en hy's 'n senior lektor in die departement van produksiedierstudies in die fakulteit van veeartsenykunde by die Universiteit van Pretoria. Nogals 'n mondvol. Dr. Rebone, good morning and thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Dopey, and thank you for having me.
So we know it's a massive crisis. Currently, Minister Steenhuisen is trying to work on the situation, and obviously farmers are up in arms regarding foot and mouth disease. But would you say that the current foot and mouth disease outbreak is a sign that South Africa's veterinary system is slowly deteriorating?
Dopey, I fully agree with you. We should be really concerned with the current status of what we've seen with the outbreak of foot and mouth disease. And it's a sign that if we do not deal with the veterinary services in our country, we are going to be in serious, serious trouble. I normally say we are fortunate that we, if you look at foot and mouth, does not really affect human beings. Had we had a serious, highly contagious zoonotic disease, we would really be in serious, serious trouble.
So what does this outbreak reveal about the state's ability to prevent and contain animal diseases?
Well, there are a number of problems in my opinion, with regards to the structure and systems. And I just want to highlight based on the national and the provincial aspects. If one looks already, the diseases like foot and mouth disease are so-called controlled diseases under the Animal Disease Act. And the Animal Disease Act empowers the director, nobody else, the director under the minister, right? And it's according to the Constitution, disease control is a concurrent function. However, the director at national doesn't really have powers over provincial leaders of veterinary services. She or he can authorize them under the Animal Disease Act, but they in their provinces, they report to someone else. So in other words, she or he doesn't have powers over them. The only thing, if they don't comply, is that she would withdraw the authorization. And he or she authorizes even up to the level of state vets and animal health technician. Now that on its own, it becomes a problem. Secondly, you have national having certain priorities, provinces having their own priorities. Now, if they do not match, you will have problems because you'll have provinces using personnel on the ground for other issues than the actual disease control. That on its own is a big, big problem. So I really believe it needs to be corrected sooner than later, right? Now you come to provinces. If you look at provinces up to the level of a state vet, at the state vet area, we have, I must say, we've got dedicated and hardworking veterinary officials. Now, a state vet would have a massive area to look after. And he or she would probably have about 7 or 8 or 10 animal health technicians. Now you compare that with the agricultural extension officers who are dealing with crops and so forth, you would find that they have more than 5 or 10 times the number of animal health technicians that we have on the ground. So it's impossible looking at the number of farmers, looking at the area and how we are located in South Africa, that you can have few people dealing with animal health being able to control diseases on the ground. Now, those are the things that need to be solved. Lastly, the finance issue. Veterinary services has been for years underfunded, and it needs to be corrected.
So, Doctor, do you think it's a bit of a hasty decision made by farmers that they are trying to put some pressure on government now to take things into their own hands?
Well, the farmers have animals on their farms, right? They see the problem. And unfortunately, as it stands, they need to come up with something to deal with the problem. It's a welfare issue, right? But at the same time, I can understand, therefore, that they want to have vaccines freely available so that they can vaccinate their animals to prevent the disease from coming to their farms. On the other hand, we must also consider what is our main priority as a country. Where do we want to go? And that's where we need to seriously review some of this. If our priority is export market, then I would say it's got to be seriously controlled by government. But if our priority in the next 3-5 years is food security, then we might have to review it and say, probably in the next 2-3 years, right, let's make these vaccines available on the ground. However, I also want to say, you've got private vets, you've got animal health technicians, unemployed animal technicians. You know, Dupi, a few years ago, actually last year, I advertised posts for interns, for 5 interns, qualified animal technicians. I had 76 applicants, whereas I wanted 5. So those people could easily be authorized by government to help on the ground. So there are ways, if we sit down properly and deal with this, there are ways to make sure that we can react sooner on the ground to be able to prevent further spread to other farmers.
Dr. Rebone, we're going to be back with you in a second. Dis Dr. Rebone Morane, hy is van die Universiteit Veeartsenykunde by die Universiteit van Pretoria. Ons gesels nou 'n bietjie oor die tekort van veeartspersoneel, maar ons is terug net hierna. Welkom terug hier op Groot Plaas. Ons gas saam met ons vanoggend Dr. Rebone Morane. Hy is natuurlik 'n senior lektor in die departement van produksie dierstudies in die fakulteit van veeartsenykunde by Universiteit van Pretoria. Dr. Rebone, so what impact does poor working conditions and uncompetitive salaries have on retaining state vets?
Dupi, unfortunately, the impact is massive on the ground. You can have a very young, dedicated veterinarian who probably comes in as compulsory community service, right? They spend 1 year in government. But what they see on the ground, how overworked the vets are, having to cover big areas and the salary not being competitive. That's why they end up leaving. They look for better opportunities abroad, right? I mean, I lecture 4th-year students on state veterinary medicine. And in that class of possibly 170, when I ask them who will be interested to join veterinary services, state veterinary services, it's absolutely less than 18 in the class. So that on its own is a massive challenge.
So, Doctor...
So the salaries are not competitive at all.
But the other big question, of course, is the resource that they have and obviously the training that they get. Is that significant, not only to work locally, but to work abroad?
Dupi, we produce the best vets in our country, and we must be proud of it. Our vets can be employed throughout the world. We produce the best. But the resources when they join state vets, and I just want to give you an example, and I challenge anyone to go and look at the provincial appropriation bills, right? They're available at National Treasury website. 79% of the budget goes for compensation, right? And the poor vets and their animal technicians, they only have about 18% for resources. Now you tell me, what can you do with that? It's obvious there's nothing much you can do. Now, you have vets who want to help farmers on the ground. They don't have basics. They don't have gloves. They don't have lubricants. They don't have proper equipment. The same thing goes with cell phone. I believe any state vet should be given an official cell phone that people can easily access them. Now, they're using their private cell phones. That's a challenge on its own.
So what is the main reason for the underfunding? Has that been a gradual process where government has just been giving away money less and less? And I think in the long haul, this is obviously going to affect our food.
Dupi, it's been coming for long. It's been coming for long. And I remember in the past, we said And that's one suggestion I would make for the future, that budget for operational for vet services must be in the form of a conditional grant from National Treasury, so that when it gets to a province, no one must have access to those funds. It must solely be used for veterinary services and nothing else. You know, so it's been coming. You've got salaries increasing annually, so they get less than 6% increment in their budget, and they still get less and less on operations. So again, with the announcement of the minister to say, you know, they are going to redirect the funds under 4 to 5% of the comprehensive agriculture support program. Now, that reminds me that years ago, already we said it, and it never really in practice happened. So my suggestion is give more for veterinary services in the field to be able to operate.
Now, Doctor, the big question is when it comes to animal disease management in South Africa, do you think South Africa has become too reactive instead of being proactive when it comes to the management of these diseases?
Absolutely, Dupi. We are more reactive than proactive. And again, I really pity our national director and the chief veterinary officer, because you can be, and I will say you can be the best vet in those positions, but if you don't have resources, there's nothing much you can do. And I want to give an example with one disease besides foot and mouth disease. You know, for years, state vets used to go to farms, conduct a surveillance on brucellosis on both commercial farms, and when coming to communal farmers, the state vets were buying vaccines at the right time to go and vaccinate heifers, young heifers in those communities. And I can tell you, Dupi, years ago, the prevalence of this disease, especially in communal areas, was at 4%. But because vet services didn't have enough funds, it stopped. People buy vaccines at the wrong time, or they don't buy vaccines at all to help these farmers. Now we're talking at the estimate prevalence of 40%. And by the way, that's a zoonotic disease. And that shows that if you don't have the right resources, unfortunately, there's nothing much you can do. You end up being reactive.
Now, Doctor, could earlier intervention have reduced the scale and the cost of the current outbreak?
Absolutely, absolutely. And that takes us, now if we go back, for example, that we were declared as a disease-free zone, right? We knew that we've got certain parts near Kruger National Park and Infolozi and so forth, which were infected. And we had a so-called protection zone, where we were vaccinating or supposed to vaccinate cattle 2 or 3 times a year, right? But again, it's a matter of assisting those farmers in those areas. Now, it's a normal thing in a human being. If I can sell a cow at 12,000 instead of 6,000, right? Obviously, I'll go and look for areas where, in the high price areas where I can, and that's why we started having illegal movement. And at the same time, we used to have strict controls. Veterinary services was involved. SAPS was involved in monitoring movement in those areas.
Doctor, sorry, I'm going to have to cut you off. Unfortunately, our time is running out, but we will continue this conversation very, very soon. Dr. Rebone Morane, hy is van die Universiteit van Pretoria se veeartseny fakulteit om te gesels oor die uitbreek van back and close. Dis al wat vir ons tyd het vandag. Ons hoop jy het dit geniet saam met ons en ons kuier weer môre.